Hello and welcome to After Scientology, Straight Up and Vertical, the weekly show where Tony Ortega and I get together and we go over the week's events in the world of Scientology as reported on Tony's Substack. Hey, Tony, welcome back to the show.
Another weird week, man.
Right? The weirdest. There is just fun, crazy. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Let's just put it that way. So let's get into it. Starting off with, there was this cache of documents that have been being gone through. And so we're getting a little bit of a historical picture from about 20 years ago, 15 years ago, of just some interesting internal shenanigans with the church. And this week, you highlighted a story that had to do with Oprah Winfrey, Tom Cruise, Brooke Shields, PR damage control. And if anybody, give the whole background on this. What was this?
Yeah, so I was looking at these two documents that were written by Mike Rinder to David Miscavige back in 2005. And I realized in order to understand exactly what they were talking about, I needed to go back and refresh my memory about what happened because I had forgotten some of these details. I don't know. I hope readers had fun. I had a good time going back and trying to remember what had happened. In May 2005, Oprah Winfrey had Brooke Shields on her show. And Brooke then revealed that she'd had severe postpartum depression after the birth of a daughter to the point where she was almost suicidal. And then she's, because she wanted people to understand, you didn't hear a lot about postpartum depression in those days. It was kind of a, new subject. And she mentioned that one of the things that got her through it was she was taking this antidepressant called Paxil. Well, a few days later, Tom Cruise gave an interview to Access Hollywood. I'd forgotten this little progression of how it worked out. Billy Bush interviewed Tom Cruise on Access Hollywood because they were getting ready for the War of the Worlds to come out. And a little bit of background also, this was when Miscavige and Rathbun had really spun Tom up to be super gung-ho to take on the idea of being sort of an ambassador for Scientology. So Tom's sort of feeling it, right? And what he tells Billy Bush is he criticizes Brooke Shields for taking antidepressants to handle her depression. Well, that was, you don't see that too often where celebrities criticize each other like that. So the London Sunday Times were interviewing Brooke Shields because at that time she was opening in a production of Chicago in London. And so the London Times asked her about Cruise's comments, and she said Tom should stick to saving the world from aliens. Now, it was a beautiful comment because on the one hand, it sort of referred to his Scientology, but on the other hand, it was, the movie War of the Worlds coming out. Brilliant. So then in June, that was in May. Then in June, Tom then gave his, infamous interview to Matt Lauer on the Today Show and really argued with him about Matt, you're glib, you don't know psychiatry, I do. And once again, criticized Brooke Shields for, talking about antidepressants. She should have stuck to, diet and exercise. So then she had about a week after that, she penned a opinion piece in the New York Times. Really ripped him, talking about his ridiculous rant on the Today Show. I had forgotten about this back and forth war of words, Chris.
Yeah.
And how many, I had forgotten the various steps. So that was in June. Then in September, news came out that Brooke Shields had taped another episode with Oprah. Oh, they're going to bring this all up again, right? Well, that's when what these documents talking about, because then Osa was panicking. Oh
Yeah.
my God, what did Oprah say about Tom Cruise? What did Oprah and Brooke Shields say about Tom Cruise? So Mike Rinder's job was to try to figure out what's going on. And this is the part that surprised me the most. The person they sent to Oprah, well, to talk to her producer, to find out what was going on was John Travolta. Now, we've talked about these guys forever, Chris, and I don't remember the idea of John Travolta being sent to back up his buddy Tom Cruise, to run under interference for Tom Cruise. I just don't. That's new to me. maybe it's been reported, but I don't know. I thought that was kind of remarkable. So Travolta's there trying to find out what he can from Oprah. And the producer's like, no, John, it's no big deal. She asked like one question, and they try to play it off like it was, Brooke just makes a point about she never really wanted to be the promoter of drugs, and Tom just doesn't want to see kids over drugged. They're trying to like totally sell it down. And so Travolta reported that back to Rinder. Meanwhile, they also reached out to Kevin Huvane, this super agent, co-chairman of CAA, big figure in Hollywood, and he tried to find out what Oprah had done. So that was really interesting. That's the kind of pull Scientology had in
Yeah.
Hollywood at that time. They could get one of the biggest agents in town to try to figure out what was going on with Oprah. And he also came to the conclusion, all right, they're saying it's no big deal, no problem. Well, then the episode aired, and then I have this communication from Rinder to Miscavige and just saying, Oprah flat out lied to JT and Kevin Huvane. Amazing, right? Amazing. And that they had, and he attached a transcript of the show, which I also put up, showing that, yeah, Oprah was all over it. She's like, oh, Brooke, tell us more about what Tom said and what you think about that. She really was digging into the controversy, and they felt really betrayed. And Rinder writes that they had sent a tape of the show to John Travolta and Kelly Preston, and they were outraged and disgusted. And Travolta was saying maybe never go on the show again. He did. Like a year later, he went back on Oprah's show like 2 times in 2007. So I don't know. I just think it's really fascinating to get that behind the scenes of how panicked they were, how they were pulling the strings of the biggest players in Hollywood to try to, head this thing off. That Oprah basically gave them the middle finger, and that John Travolta was being used to back up his buddy Tom. I thought that was really interesting. And think about the time in 2005. This was a few years after the Battlefield Earth debacle, when we all assumed that Travolta was in the doghouse with Miscavige. So, but Miscavige wasn't above using him for this kind of thing. So I don't know. Just I thought it was really fascinating. I know that. Some of our younger readers may not even remember this period. It's so long ago. But I don't know, Chris. I thought it was kind of fascinating, wasn't it?
Oh, I absolutely did. And for a number of reasons. There's a lot, as you mentioned, there's the celebrity level, there's the PR angle, there's Oprah, of course, who is probably one of the most media savvy people around, who, of course, is going to milk controversy. And the thing I wanted to comment on real fast with this is just the self-inflicted wounds of Tom Cruise and Scientology with this, in that, Tom just starts this war, continues this war,
Yeah.
and is really feeling his oats, so to speak, at this time period as a come out Scientologist. I'm going to really give the world what it is. And
It's such a fascinating period because
yeah,
when Tom had been married to Nicole Kidman, she started out very gung ho about Scientology. But then by about 1992, she pulled away and he went with her. And from 92 to 2000, Tom Cruise kind of was keeping his distance from Miscavige and the Church of Scientology, with some exceptions. He went to the Hollywood Celebrity Center in 1998. But then they broke up in 2001, and Miscavige made it job one. We got to get Tom back in the fold. And that's what Marty Rathman has talked about, that he spent years, couple of years, auditing Tom, getting him really back in that frame of mind. So by 2003, they felt like not only was Tom Cruise fully back in the right frame of mind, but they were ready to start pushing him out. And in 2003, he went to that grand opening of the new Applied Scholastics building in Missouri. And then in 2004, he went to the only grand opening of an ideal org he's ever gone to, which was in Madrid, and
yeah,
gave a speech in Spanish. And then by 2005, it's like, okay, this is it. The War of the Worlds is coming out. They thought of him as being an ambassador of Scientology. That's what Miscavige wanted him to do. But then
yeah,
how did it work out? He was such a jerk, right? He was criticizing Brooke Shields. He was arguing with Matt Lauer. Utter disaster. And I
right.
can tell you, the Hollywood side of the Tom Cruise enterprise were horrified. And they're like, you cannot do this. And he pulled back, and he has kept his mouth shut about Scientology for the most part. ever since the last 20 years, with some very minor exceptions. So this was a really interesting period where Miscavige wanted him to be this kind of in your face messenger for Scientology, and Tom was on board. But as soon as they actually tried it, it just totally backfired on them.
Well, exactly. And to be blunt, to get right to the heart of the matter, Tom Cruise showed the world what a Scientologist really is like.
Right, right. Very good.
And that's, I mean, because those kind of conversations he was having with Matt, we're all sitting there going, yeah, you go, Tom. You go, man. You put that guy in his place. You tell him how it is. He is glib. He doesn't know the history. He doesn't know anything. And Brooke Shields is off the rails. Oh, we all ate it up, right? We were laughing that stuff up. But the funny thing about all of that was we weren't really the audience. I mean, Tom really did want to bring Scientology to the world, and he got, face slapped hard over that whole thing and had to tone it down. And as you said, he's never really come out since then on that. Also, remember, this is the time period when the whole is flourishing and prospering, right? When he's got that thing going full tilt boogie. And so Mike Rinder is, is coming out of the hole to do this work. And John Travolta was never in the hole, but he was in his own hole because of Battlefield Earth. And so him doing this kind of work would be the exact kind of celebrity amends project that would put him back into, okay, we're going to trust you again because you screwed up Battlefield Earth so hard, right? Because it's literally one of the worst movies ever made. And so it all kind of comes together, which is why
I'm glad you made that point. That's right. The Miscavige, my personal theory is that once that the Lisa McPherson case, the criminal case was dismissed in 2000 or 2001. The civil case kept going, but it was clear that was going away as well, and it went away in 2004.
Yep.
My personal theory is that Miscavige at that point felt invincible. He had gone through a kind of a legal wall of fire, and that's when he starts the hole. Early in 2004, starts throwing his own people into a prison because he can't trust anybody.
Yep.
This is a year later, 2005. My memory is Mike Rinder told me he first went into the hole in 2006. So I don't know that Mike had been thrown in there yet, but he would have known about it. And he was in the hole from like 2006, 2007, I think. And then they pulled him out to deal with John Sweeney.
Right.
That's my memory. I might be wrong. He might have been in earlier in 2005, but they would have known about it. I mean, Mike would have known about it, would have known that these people were in prison while he's out there trying to deal with Tom Cruise and Oprah Winfrey. And Miscavige had that over everybody's heads. But what an amazing period that was. And I know we have more information about that than we do like the last 5 or 10 years. But I think it's not just more information. I think it's just that's such an incredible few years in Scientology history, from the end of the McPherson debacle until Shelley disappears in 2005. Those 3 or 4 years, just really incredible period.
Absolutely. Let me make one more point on this, which is that Miscavige is classically a micromanager. We know this from so many people who came out, right? And Scientology's his attempt to control every aspect of this stuff is the sort of self-inflicted wound. Because had he not done all of that, had these people contacting Oprah, trying to pressure her, I mean, do you think Oprah didn't know what they were doing or what they were about? She's like, oh, clearly this is controversial. Clearly this is something to mine more of. And so just like with the other things they do to bring attention to themselves in an unnecessary way, trying to control it, they make it worse for themselves. And I agree with you that this time period was really crucial in the sort of public, because this is right before the whole anonymous thing. I mean, this is just right in that time period. So, so all of these things kind of lead one to the next to its current shrunken state,
Yeah.
All right. So that's why I really love going through these history points it's absolutely fascinating stuff. Now, also related to Tom Cruise and much more closer to present time, we have Joy Villa, Via coming out and the things that she's been saying, and she had some choice words
Yeah.
about the cruise kids.
Right. And it's Joy Vila is how she
Vila,
says it.
yes.
And she surprised everyone, I think, on May 14th by going public and saying that she was no longer in Scientology and she was going to criticize it.
Yeah.
And then she came on the Underground Bunker. We did a live video, Alex Barnes Ross and myself with her, I think late May. And then and she was great. Really interesting. She's got very interesting things to say about how she was under a lot of pressure to stop being a Christian. And that's one of those lines Scientology always puts out. You can be a Christian and a Scientologist. You can be Jewish and Scientologist. It's not true. She was under a lot of pressure to stop being a Christian. And one of the things that drove her out. But also she saw all the other abuses everyone sees, the money and the sec checking and everything else. So it's great to have a new person reporting all those things. Well, I followed up with her on a phone call. And because I wanted to ask her specifically about her experiences in the Scientology Celebrity Center and all that. And we started talking about the things that she saw. And yeah, she knew Tom Cruise, she knew John Travolta, but she told me that she knew much better their kids. And I thought that was very interesting that she had gotten to know Bella Cruz really well because she had spent time at St. Hill. And because Tom Cruise's daughter lives in England, Isabella, but his son Connor lives in Florida, Clearwater. So she spent time in both, a lot of time in both. So she got to know Bella Cruz, she got to know Connor Cruz. She also got to know John Travolta's daughter Ella Blue, who's 25, by the way. I for some reason I thought she was still a teenager or something. But anyway,
they grow fast.
yeah, she knew them well, and she told me some very interesting things. She said that Bella was really driven. She really, she's kind of a designer, makes t-shirts and stuff, and she's really driven and independent. And only she was around Bella all the time, and only saw Tom Cruise a couple times with her, like 3 or 4 times a year, she said.
Yeah.
And then Bella would say things like, "Well, I'm trying to save up some money to do this or that," and Joy was telling me, she's like, "Save money? Why would you need to save money? You're Tom Cruise's kid." But that was Bella. She was independent. She was really kind of, she called her kind of a rock and roll rebel is the way what Joy called her. Really liked her. And she said Connor was kind of the opposite. And also very interesting. And I first broke the news about this, I don't know, 6 years ago, where we found this document Bella had written, a testimonial about being an auditor, and that she's into it. And Joy confirmed that. She says she's highly trained. She's totally into Scientology. Connor's kind of the opposite. He's not really into Scientology. He walks around the Fort Harrison Hotel barefoot, and he's sort of out of it. And but even though Connor may not be into doing Scientology courses and things like that, he's kind of like a what do you call it? He goes a professional fisherman, right? He takes people on fishing trips. That they're trapped. They're never going to get out of Scientology, is what Joy said. And then same for their dad, And
Right.
and I just thought that was really interesting. Ella Blue, the same. She said she's really sweet. She's working on becoming an actress now. Really enjoyed spending time with her, and she said the same thing. They're just totally trapped in Scientology. They'll never get out. So that was worth reporting. Kind of fun to get some updates on those folks. The other thing Joy said was she was talking about that there's a lot of pressure on them as celebrities to maintain the appearances for Scientology. And she specifically talked about illnesses, and that this friend of hers, this Stefan Arnio, who she described as kind of a mini Grant Cardone, was really an up and comer, was doing really well in Scientology, was making news as an entrepreneur, and then he got cancer. And she said he told her Scientology did not want him to get standard treatment, and so he went to Mexico for alternative treatments and died.
Yep.
And Joy volunteered without me even asking. She said, it was her opinion that Kirstie Alley and Kelly Preston went through the same thing, that they did not get standard care for Scientology. Now, I pointed out to her because that is interesting with like Kirstie in particular, died from a kind of cancer that people these days do pretty well generally on treatments. But I mentioned to her that when Kelly Preston died, John Travolta announced it in an Instagram post where he thanked the doctors of MD Anderson, which is one of the best cancer centers in the country. They have
Yep.
various centers, but and she said that was PR. Joy said that was PR. Very interesting. I know we've talked in the past about how Scientologists following Hubbard are very skeptical of standard medicine and will seek alternatives. Uh, but we've said in the past that we didn't think Scientology would get in the way if somebody wanted to get standard cancer care. But Joy is saying no, that they were getting in the way. What do you think of that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that the pressure internally, socially, as well as from the church, is intense. I mean, remember, these are the people who read Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health, which says this can cure cancer, this can cure leukemia, right?
Right.
So when you are, and yet there's the reality of Scientologists get cancer all the time because they're not immune to it any more than anybody else is. And it's a very prolific disease. So I think that it could have been PR at the same time. I think that another scenario is that they went off for the alternative treatments, Kirsty, Kelly, etc. It doesn't work, and too late they go to the actual medical doctors, right? And this is not related, but the Apple guy, right? Who I can't believe I'm forgetting his name right now, right? Who got cancer and then wanted to do natural treatments and realized too late, oh, I should have gone and gotten some actual medical treatment, right? I think that is another possible explanation of Kelly and John's thankful, because it would have been weird out of nowhere to thank a bunch of people he never even met with. So, and John's not that much of a lying scumbag as a person, compared to somebody like a Tom Cruise who would lie and say anything that David Miscavige tells him to. So my take on that. But the medical stuff in Scientology, yeah, it's not just orders from the top. It's a cultural, social thing in that group. And the celebrities are under, this is where, let me say this. This is where it really sucks to be a celebrity in Scientology. You get VIP treatment, you get exceptions to the rules faster than anybody else. You're absolutely right about those things. But at the same time, when you break appearance, when you give a bad presentation in David Miscavige's estimation to the world, you are in the doghouse forever, if not kicked right out. I mean, look at how fast Leah got the boot, right? Because she didn't come to heel. So it is a two-sided coin for the celebs too when it comes to that public face of Scientology, and this is where we see it. And Joy brings it out and describes it. So I'm really glad she did that. Okay, now we had some legal updates. You kind of gave a whole rundown on where everything stands. What's the summary here?
Right. I had a few people send me that story about Martin Kove, the actor, the Cobra Kai actor.
That was a weird story.
Yeah. So he was at this fan event, and one of the other actors on the show, a woman named Alicia Hannah Smith, I think it was, she saw him and came up to him and said hi, and he grabbed her arm and bit it and then kissed it. And she was really unhappy about that. Police got involved. There's actual body cam footage showing her confronting him over it. But ultimately, she decided not to press charges. So I wasn't sure what to do with that one, Chris, because, I know that Martin Kove is a longtime Scientologist. A lot of people don't realize that. We've written about that before, but, there's always people that are like, I had no idea, and but he's been in Celebrity Magazine and stuff, so does that matter? Does that mean that he's more or less likely to do something like that? That's not great behavior. I don't know, but I just thought, enough people were emailing me that I should at least acknowledge it. I don't know what to say about that and whether it has anything to do with him being in Scientology or not. But I thought, well, as long as I bring that up, let's go through the other cases. So just did a little legal roundup in the Whitney Mills death lawsuit, negligence lawsuit brought by her mother, Layla Mills. Um, there is a notation in the docket that they are in mediation. So that's ongoing. Maybe it'll result in a settlement. I don't know. But in the meantime, Layla Mills is still pressing. Her attorney is sending more questions for information from Dr. Minkoff, specifically about communications he had with the Church of Scientology about Whitney Mills and after her death. And oh, I hope they can get some of that out of him. That would
Oh
really
yeah.
be interesting. So that's the latest there. I don't know. We may not hear anything for a while in that case. LRH 2.0, Lafayette Ronald Hubbard, previously known as Justin Craig, who has been sitting in a Tennessee county jail since October 2021, has another new charge, Chris. He
Are you
added
kidding
a
me?
charge in
Another
April.
one?
Yes, in April, he was charged for assaulting a first responder. And that's all the information. I don't have any details. I've sent an email to the court clerk, see if I can get some more information. There's a document on the docket I'd like to get my hands on. I've asked for that. But yeah, he's got more hearings coming up in July. I had one of my readers was asking a good question. How is somebody in jail for 4 years almost without going to trial? I don't know the situation. The one time I talked to the DA there, he made it sound like it was LRH's 2.0's attorney that was putting it off. I think
Hmm.
they don't want to go to trial because they know it's not going to be good.
Hmm.
But yeah, he's still he gets in more trouble.
This guy. I mean,
Also,
if I could just say real fast, I mean,
yeah.
he is following in Hubbard's footsteps in that Hubbard was a violent guy,
Well, keep in mind,
especially
there
towards
are
women.
people that are convinced this guy is the reincarnated L. Ron Hubbard and send him money every month to jail.
It's unbelievable to me. It really is.
I know. And then the only other update was just in Leah's
Yeah.
case where we now have both Leah's lawsuits being held up by this appeal of a preliminary ruling.
Right.
Both sides have submitted their appeal briefs now, and I just wanted to mention that Texas lawyer, the appellate attorney I talked to, I asked him, I said, what are the chances of there now being oral hearings over these arguments? And he said, almost assuredly, it's going to happen. So I'm looking forward. I'm keeping an eye on the docket to see if they schedule that. The last time this appellate division did oral arguments in one of the cases we were watching was the Danny Masterson civil trial, and we were able to watch it live on Zoom. So if that's the case this time, no, that was during the pandemic. So maybe they're I don't know if they're still doing that or not, but if they are, boy, it'll be interesting. I think there's a big audience, people wanting to see Scientology's attorneys arguing against Leah's attorneys. So that's what I'm looking forward to there. I'm keeping an eye on the doc to see if we get some information about that.
Great.
But
Cool.
otherwise, the other cases are we're just waiting for documents to come in.
All right, fair enough. I mean, I'll just comment a little bit on that Martin Cove one, just because you said it, it's not Scientology's to go biting people. Okay, there's definitely none of that in there. So that was just whatever lack of impulse control this dude has. Scientology certainly hasn't dealt with it. Let's put it that way. Um, and the fact that she stood up for herself and put it out there is actually I'm impressed. I'm really happy that happened, because these kind of things happen and then get brushed aside. And the current culture in Hollywood right now is not about going after these perpetrators. So it
Right.
would be so it's good. I'm glad that that's out there. um Okay, now we also had an update on Ideal Org openings and a new mission of Scientology opening.
Well, we had one ideal org open this year. That was the one in South Africa.
Uh huh.
And I get these press releases from the Church of Scientology. And this week they opened a new ideal mission.
Right.
I don't know, this started several years ago where, these ideal orgs are incredibly expensive. They're like, I think Paul Burkhart on Leah's show said they're like $25 million each.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Dave likes to open 3 or 4 a year. He
Yep.
opened 4 last year. He's opened 1 so far this year. Um, Ideal Missions is something else. The Mission Network used to be a real powerhouse for Scientology back in the 70s. A lot of people got into Scientology through these independently owned and operated missions where people would go in and do the initial courses, get introduced to Scientology, and then eventually get funneled up to the orgs, and then ultimately to the advanced orgs. But the mission network was key, and I think Hubbard liked it that way. After Hubbard went into seclusion in February 1980, however, and a younger crew of people started taking over. David Miscavige was not in control at that time, but he was among a group of younger executives that were starting to run things. And in 1982, supposedly with Hubbard's okay, they had this showdown with the mission holders. It's a very famous San Francisco meeting. Basically they just declared suppressive on the spot, one or two mission holders, and basically told them there was new corporate structure, and and really changed the game at that point.
Yep.
Many, 3 decades later, 4 decades later, the mission network is a shell of what it once was, right? There's missions still, but much fewer. They are not the big feeder to Scientology that they once were. It's just a shadow of what it once was. But Miscavige has started having some of them go ideal. Now, this is not like with the ideal orgs where they get a new building and they spend millions of dollars. The ideal mission maybe got a new coat of paint or something, but it's basically the same old mission. They have a grand opening, they put up the ribbons and stuff. I don't, I'm sure they charge the mission holder extra money because that's part of the deal, right?
Oh
But
yeah.
I don't know. I haven't seen any evidence that these ideal missions are really kickstarting any big recruitment, but they are opening quite a few. I went back through the press releases I had and realized they've opened like 6 of them just in the last 6 months or something. And the most recent
Interesting.
was this one this week in Montrose, California, uh, in LA County. It's called Church of Scientology of the Foothill. No, a mission. Yeah, Church of Scientology Mission of the Foothills, I think is what it's called.
Mm.
And it's where it always was. It's they just it's maybe it has some new signage or something, I don't know, and I'm sure everything inside is ideal as far as the admin tech and all that, whatever. But they had a grand opening, so I just and also they had people give speeches, local officials give speeches, so I thought, hey, let's see who they were, who are the people that are speaking for Scientology. uh and I don't know, Chris. I feel like Dave just likes having openings. He likes having these. He doesn't go to the ideal mission ones. This is beneath his.
Right.
He's this is not important enough for him. But I don't know that this is doing anything to really help Scientology's problems with recruitment and bringing people up to the orgs. It just feels like, again, a dog and pony show to convince the donors that everything's fine.
Correct. That's exactly what it is, and it's no more than that. This is PR fluff. You described the history, quite well. The Mission Network was the beginning of the end for Scientology. Was the collapse of that in the early '80s, and this is, I mean, you can trace it. It's because it's the bottom rung. It's the vacuum cleaner that pulls in all the people. That is what the Mission Network was. And that's how my parents got involved. That's how so many old school Scientologists got involved, was through missions. And and they were effective because they were independently operated. They weren't under the thumb and micromanagement of L. Ron Hubbard's stupidity and David Miscavige's incompetence. And so they were able to flourish until Hubbard and Miscavige got sick and tired of their independence, and they needed more money because of the raids in 1977, because the missions were the place where they were getting their legal money from. The money coming up from the missions is what paid Scientology's legal bills. And it wasn't enough after the FBI raid. So the Mission Network thing was the tearing that whole thing apart was a desperation move to extract money, and they ruined the entire thing in the process, and it never ever rebuilt after that. And they didn't declare just a couple people. There were swaths of people being declared from the stage And
Yeah.
this is where they talk about gang bang sec checking, where they would have like 10 people in a room behind the e-meter and one dude on the cans. That's where this was happening. And I mean, the pressure was they were emptying these people's bank accounts. I mean, it was straight up extortion. And then they got rid of them anyway. And these were the people who were leading the most successful public inflow activities that Scientology has, because the orgs
Right.
were crap.
Right.
I mean, you can talk to anybody who was in Scientology back then. They'll tell you all about it. LA Org was a flea-ridden, cockroach-infested horror
Right.
show. Nobody wanted to go to the orgs. So, point being that after they destroyed that, what do they have now? A shell game. That's exactly what they have. These are just painted over exteriors, as you say, and an excuse for a PR event. But you go check the hours, operation hours of these places. They're open 3 hours a day.
I was just going to say, one of my readers really went into a long research project where he got the list of, in the 70s and 80s, the long list of all the missions around the country, and then showed how few of them are still around, and then went to each one of their websites and stuff and found like, oh, this one's only open for 3 hours a day and
Exactly.
only every other day. I mean,
That's right.
they're just not what they once were. So sure, you can call one ideal and have a party and put in some new furniture or something, but it's not really going to solve the problem.
Not at all, especially because Miscavige's metrics now is his stats is square footage.
Right.
So that's all these things are contributing to is more square footage of Scientology properties, not new people in. And it's all good news to us, by the way. I mean, this just to put it in perspective, right? I'm not lamenting the loss of the mission network. I'm just pointing out the foot bullet aspect of it, right? This is a self-inflicted wound, something Miscavige seems to specialize in if you think about it long term. Okay, now let's end off with going back to the UK, as we've been doing the last many weeks. There's this protest thing, this request for laws to be passed or some change to be made. What's the latest on this in wrapping that
This
whole
was a
thing up?
really big week. Alex Barnes Ross,
Yep.
back in 2023, when David Miscavige made it clear he was going to return the IS gala to St. Hill, said he was going to have a protest there for it. Scientology was really upset about it. And so in 2024, they asked a regional council for what's called a Public Spaces Protection Order, a PSPO, basically a legal ban on protesting, which, is pretty draconian. And you need a lot of evidence proving that there was real problems involved. So, the council had to take it seriously. And they said, no, we're not going to do this just because you're asking for it. We're going to take evidence. And so last year's IS Gala in October, they were on hand. They had observers there to watch the protest. They interviewed the police. They asked Scientology to submit materials. Alex Barnes Ross was interviewed and submitted materials. And, this was a big undertaking by this council. So they finally decided instead of passing a really harsh law, which might end up in lawsuits. They approached both sides and said, "Can we just get you guys to agree to a code of conduct?" And at first, they were kind of asking Alex a little too much, and he kind of pushed back. Ultimately, the code of conduct was just the law that already exists. Like, just do what when the police ask you to stand in one area, stand in that area, whatever. So both sides agreed. And so at that point, the council staff said, okay, we're going to recommend to the council that they not adopt this law. We don't need it. At that point, once they made that decision, all the documents of this almost year-long investigation became public. And one of them was, I went through them, and the one that interested me the most was, oh, here's Scientology's pitch. Here's Scientology's, evidence for why they need this law. And it was basically a letter from Peter Hodkin, the solicitor for Scientology in the UK. And I don't know. It was I pulled out a few observations from the police. The police were like, peaceful protest. Whenever we asked these guys to do something, they did it. We asked Scientology to do something, they did it. No problem. Police don't see a problem, right? But then Hodgkin's letter is like, oh, these religious people going into their place of worship, and they're hearing all these horrible things, and it was just, I just thought it was hilarious. And not only that did we get to see this letter from Hodgkin, but then the actual item on the agenda for coming up for a vote is taking place today, Monday, in England. And Scientology did what they did in Clearwater just a month ago, and at the last second said, "You know what? We don't want that law after all." And they have withdrawn their petition at the very last minute. Now in Clearwater, they wanted this street, and it was obvious they were going to go to a no vote. They were going to lose. And so Miscavige had an attorney pull it out at the last second. And the Clearwater Council then pulled it off the agenda. So there was no embarrassing, no vote for Scientology. But Alex tells me in this case, it's too late. They're going to go ahead and do this meeting today in England, and they're going to bring this agenda item up, and they're going to talk about this, and they're going to talk about Scientology withdrawing. And then they're going to say, no, we're not going to do this law. So very, very embarrassing for Scientology. I don't know. Is that Dave just throwing a temper tantrum, or what is it? Why would they, after the council has spent the whole year really working very hard on this, why would he pull this out, the rug out from underneath them?
Well, he probably doesn't understand that they're going to carry on with this anyway, and he thinks it's going to be the same thing as Clearwater. Oh, okay. We're fine. We're fine. Let's not have any more press about this. Let's not, highlight my failure. And he doesn't understand the process, which would be par for the course. Miscavige is not somebody who digs process. He wants what he wants, and he wants it now. Damn it. And so, could we say there is a, that he has an impulse control problem? Yeah, kind of like Martin Cove does. It's along the same lines, and that's my take on that. And I hope Alex is right, and I hope that they get a little bit of a public bashing. Also, because of the fact that he doesn't understand probably the whole investigation process. His view of it is, oh, a lawyer wrote a letter and that's all that happened. He doesn't understand that these people invested hours and hours and hours of their time, and of course they want to take this to a due process completion. So, and when you're surrounded by yes men, you think everybody just responds to you, and that's not the world that we really live in. So that's my hot take on that. Okay, so those were the stories for this week. Some ups, some downs, some wild history, and some interesting current events. I hope you guys found this interesting, educational, informative as always. Tony, any sort of advance notice on what might be coming up?
I think we got some more historical stuff that's kind of wild and surprising coming up this week too. So check out the bunker, whatever you do.
All right. Well, the address is right there on the screen, as you see every week. Go to Tony's Substack, subscribe, get your daily notifications, get yourself informed, and then come check in with us on Mondays for the wrap up. I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.